Hello and welcome to Fire in the Belly. Today we'll have myself, Mighty Pete, and we're joined by the Mo Barrett. Good afternoon to you. Good evening. Good afternoon, I should say. Yes.
Yeah, good. Just good day, right? I
Good
lost track
day.
of all the time. Yeah,
Well, this is the beauty of being zooming all over the world. We get to meet in
right.
different time zones, anytime and any place. So good day to you. So I think that's
Yes,
the way
yes.
forward. So Mo, listen,
That's
absolute
awesome.
pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you so much for coming on. So
Oh, thanks for letting me come on. This is going to be a thrill. I'm excited.
well, listen, that's what it's all about. That's what it's all about. So
Right?
Mo, tell us, who are you? What do you do? And where are you from?
Who am I? Let's see. Well, let's start with where I'm from. I'm actually in the D.C. area from Northern Virginia originally, so born and raised. Kind of went around the world in the Air Force, and I'm back and retired. But now I'm an anecdotist, which is basically a fancy word for storyteller, and I use my anecdotes to help people laugh, learn, and think in that order.
Wow, okay. What's the qualifications of an anecdotist? Is it just life, be to live?
Someone who has an anecdote, and I think everybody, and I've heard you say this as well, but everybody's got a story, right? Everybody's got something they're passionate about, and everybody's got a story, and I'm no different. So I just use my stories and help people find the magic in those mundane moments.
Wow, I'm looking forward to this. So tell us
Me
what
too.
what does fire in the belly mean to you then?
Well, as a pilot, it means land the plane. As a hot sauce aficionado, it means maybe stop eating the hot sauce. But I think in terms of what you're looking for, it's that drive and that determination, that focus, that thing again that lights you up in the literal sense, right? The thing that just gets you out of bed and lights you up. And there's days when you want to sleep in, and there's days when you're getting up to do the thing that you want to do, and that's the fire in the belly that's getting you out of bed.
Do you have it? Have you always had it?
I've always had it. I just didn't. I think I was kind of. What's I'm trying to think of the fireman term for it. I think I was always trying to kind of extinguish it in a little bit because I always knew that I was a little bit different. But I think the thing that makes somebody passionate or somebody's fire in their belly is what makes them unique. And we're all unique, thank God. Just like you were saying before, is that thank God we're all a little bit different and we look at things from just a little perspective, a little bit different perspective. But so, yeah, I think I've always had it. I just have finally learned to embrace it and just accept it and now start to leverage it.
Well, I mean, so in the background for anyone that's listening to this today, in your background you have your book. So it's Pardon My Quirk. And well, first of all, what a fantastic title. So tell us, I mean, introduce the book first. What's it all about?
So part of my quirk is, as a speaker, you're supposed to have a speaker book. And so this really started out as, let me just get my speaker book so I have my door opening tool. But one of the things I loved about it is as a storyteller, I started realizing that your stories have they just have a different taste and a different flavor in the written form, in the pre-recorded form, and in the delivered live form. And so it was a really fascinating project that I was doing something that was just, I kind of had to get it done as a speaker, but I really enjoyed the process. And it was one of those things where just realizing the different evolutions of one story. And so this book is 43 anecdotes, if you will, of my life. And sometimes they're just mundane moments. Sometimes there are moments when I'm lazy, but it's just finding the lessons in those sometimes humorous, hopefully humorous events that happen to us all the time.
Because that's one of your things, right? I mean, it's just it's the non-conformist, if you like, as well. You're sort of
Yeah.
saying you're just I mean, well, it's kind of interesting coming from an Air Force background. So that's structure, that's discipline, that's routine, conforming, right? And
Right.
then you come out of that and you go, yeah, I'm going to go the other way, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
I've just realized that because I've been conforming for so long, now I'm going to be non-conforming, and I'm going to celebrate that, right? Is it
Yep.
as polar opposite as that? Do you think?
It's a little bit like that. So when I actually was joining, was first even applying to go into the Air Force Academy, I remember being at my the medical evaluation board, and it's just a formality, and so it's just kind of make sure you got your heartbeat, no heart murmur, blood pressure, all those things. And at the very end, this guy with this clipboard, he's just the final questions, and he says, "Any illegal drug use?" I'm like, "Nope." Okay. Any criminal record? Nope. Okay. any problems with homosexuality? And I'm like, well, at the time, it was illegal to be gay and in the military, and I'd known I was gay since I was 4, so you could say I had a fire in my belly for other women, I guess. But the question he asked me, though, was, do you have any problems with homosexuality? And in my head, I'm thinking, no, I'm very good at it. But I kind of knew what he was getting at, so I just said, no, I don't have any problems with homosexuality. And it was one of those things where it was just a reminder very early on that I was different. But we're all different. And I also think that part of my rationale for answering the way I did, even though I knew what the intent of the question was, is that all these different labels that can define us are just a part of what we are and who we are, but we are more than those labels. So I knew I was more than gay, more than half Asian, more than female, more than from a military family, all those different things that we use to label ourselves, that I was more than just those individual labels. And so it was one of those things where there was something that kind of made me quirky or maybe illegal, but I was bigger than that. And I knew I had a future as an Air Force officer and as a leader, and that was something that was important to me. So that was one of those times when I kind of suppressed that quirky aspect of me. But I think all those things that make us different actually are what make us different in the best possible ways. So we have this great perspective and a synergy in what we all contribute to each other and to the bigger, greater world, if you will.
Hmm. Has that changed now? I'm assuming it has, but I just sometimes just ask the obvious question.
Yeah, no, it has. In effect, in my career span, I roughly 30 years in the Air Force. From the time I went into the Air Force Academy, it was illegal. And then right as I was graduating and becoming a commissioned officer, we had the don't ask, don't tell policy. And it was, yeah, you can be gay. We just kind of don't want to know about it. And let's just kind of keep it on the down low ish. I'm paraphrasing.
Hmm.
And then that was repealed in 2011. And then in 2013, it became legal to have same-sex marriages in the military. So in my career span of roughly 30 years, I went from it being illegal to I ended up being married, and my partner, who was also an Air Force colonel, retired with my last name. So in one career span, and that kind of shows you how quickly the U.S. military kind of evolved, or that policy went through. It went from being illegal to I have a wife who's got the same last name as me. We both retired from the Air Force with the same last name.
Hmm. There's a bit of a proud moment there. There's a nice smile on your face when you said that.
That someone would marry me? Yes, you're right. It's a very proud moment.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
No, it's amazing, isn't it, to actually to have gone through
Yeah.
that, I suppose, and you know, you kind of hope that that's just a past historic event. You kind of going, yeah, that
Hmm.
was just a moment back then. Thankfully, life is here now, so we've moved on, right?
Yeah.
You
Yep.
know, yeah. What did the Air Force teach you then? What did you learn when you were there?
The biggest thing I learned from the Air Force was confidence. And not just confidence in yourself and your own talents, but confidence in the people around you. I think a lot of times you have managers who kind of are afraid to delegate, or it's not that they're afraid to delegate, they just don't because they have this control freak. And it's like, if you want a job done right, you're going to do it yourself. And the Air Force, and especially the Air Force Academy, taught me that you got to trust the people on either side of you to do their part of the job because, again, you're better together. So it's confidence in myself, confidence in my own talents, recognition of my own talents, and also my deficiencies, but also confidence in the people around you.
Hmm. That's beautiful, isn't it? I mean, it's almost, confidence in your deficiencies. I mean, that's a beautiful life lesson right there. It's saying, listen,
Yeah.
we're all imperfect and that's okay. It's
Hmm.
okay to be imperfect. In fact, celebrate it and sort of the more you know your weaknesses, that makes you stronger, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So tell me then, I mean, you've moved on and like say you've gone into writing books amongst other things, but the one strapline that comes out for a lot of the people there is your laugh, learn, think. So can you introduce that to us for us? What does that mean for you?
Laugh, learn, think is just it's for me. It's my secret sauce recipe, and I think that especially right now, we need laughter more than ever. My father suffered from Alzheimer's, and he had it for about 8 years. And so my mom was his primary caregiver, and there were times when you couldn't do anything else. I mean, you wanted to cry, you wanted to throw things, and it was just one of these things where sometimes all you could do was laugh. And I remember being able to laugh with my dad. That was a thing that bonded us together and just kind of made everything okay in a moment that wasn't otherwise okay. I remember one time I was going to help my mom, and to get him into bed was a fairly big ordeal. By the time he had kind of lost a lot of weight, he was down to like 170 pounds. I won't do the kilograms
Mm-hmm.
conversion. But still a big guy, and my mom's a small Asian woman, so I would give my dad a big hug, and I would lift him out of his wheelchair and pivot him onto the bed. And I remember one time I did that, and he just kind of panicked when I did that this one time, and he clenched his legs around my leg, and I was kind of like stuck holding my dad in the air, and the whole goal was to get him into bed. So I just kind of continued with that motion. And long story short, I ended up kind of laying on top of my dad on my parents' bed. And I was telling my dad, I'm like, Dad, you got to let go. I said, this is inappropriate. He goes, why? May's not here, like May's my mom. And I'm thinking, that's not why this is inappropriate. And she is right there. I said, I'm your daughter. That's why this is inappropriate. And he goes, oh, and he lets go. And it was one of those things where I think there's times when you can just get so frustrated by that experience or just so saddened by that experience. And I just looked at my mom and we started laughing. We started laughing so hard that we were crying. And then my dad started laughing. He didn't know why. But there's a nice equalizing benefit of laughter. And I think it kind of disarms you a little bit. So that's why laughter has to come first for me. The learning part is, I think, because I've always been kind of considered a clown, if you will, I like to sneak that learning part in there. And then when you're disarming somebody with some laughter, then kind of sneak a little life lesson, like what's the thing you can take away, or what's the thing I take away from that given experience. And then kind of leave people thinking. It's just kind of like, you want to walk away and having release some endorphins by laughing. And then all of a sudden people go, I'm still thinking about you on top of your dad and how that was funny somehow. And if you can laugh through that, then I can laugh through this, whatever this is. So that's kind of the genesis behind laughing and learning and thinking. But I grew up in a household, we were always laughing. And that's very formative and that's very powerful. And I saw the power of that and just try to keep. I mean, there's days when it's not easy to laugh, though. You know that too. So
Yeah. What do you think? I mean, is that a tool? Is a tool we should all have, just the ability just to stop a moment and look at the bizarreness of the situation, or just the place that you find yourself. I mean, is it a skill to be able to laugh at that point in time?
I think they're two separate skills. I think the ability to stop and almost separate yourself from the situation that you're in is important. If it's a positive situation, it's important to step back and have gratitude and appreciation for that moment. My best friend calls them perfect moments, like when you just stop and go, "Look at where we are. We're in this magical place, and we're spending time with someone we care about, and just taking that moment to recognize." So you have to separate yourself from it. And when things are really bad, I think it's important to separate and say, "All right, this sucks, but it's going to get better." And right now, this is just a moment in time that sucks. So I think it's number one, it's that recognition to be able to just stop and separate and recognize the situation. Then the laughter time is, I mean, there's times when it's probably not appropriate to laugh, and that's usually when you laugh the most. But laughter is one of those things you can use to cope, or laughter is one of those things that you can use to kind of relieve that stress. But to me, they're kind of separate tools to recognize and then to use laughter, because I think not everybody can find the funny in that moment until you kind of separate. But yeah, so to me, they're kind of two separate tools.
Because that's the thing. I mean, God forbid, it's the enormity of some of those emotional situations. It shouldn't be something we have to deal with day to day. So you either choose to process that emotion in some form, and laughter is a very valid way of doing it, or what's the opposite, right? You don't laugh, and that's almost worse,
Hmm.
and the long-term effect, right?
Yeah. I always tell people, find your blooper reel. I apologize if there's banging. My neighbors there's a new house being constructed next door, and they are framing and shingling as we speak.
Wonderful.
But it's a warts and all conversation, right? So,
Yeah, absolutely.
and then I lost my track.
We were saying about the appropriateness of laughing in the times where we don't
Oh,
laugh, and
oh,
that in itself is an issue.
right. Thank you. I tell people to find their blooper reel. Having read your bio and some of the things, I understand you suffer from depression, and I do as well. And there are times when I am so down in the dumps, and sometimes I can't separate enough from that, and it's a struggle. But the one thing I can always do is I have this one YouTube link, and it's like maybe 15 minutes of bloopers. And it's, for some reason, it's just news anchors or weather reporters and their bloopers. And for whatever reason, when I'm down in the dumps, even if I can't separate, even if I can't find the funny, if I watch this blooper reel, that's what makes me laugh. And once I'm laughing, then I can start separating and getting away from that moment that's just, I think it's just the end of the world is coming. So I tell people, find your blooper reel, because maybe you won't be able to laugh at the situation you're in, and maybe you can't get separated enough from the situation you're in. But if you find something that's going to make you laugh, whether it's kittens falling asleep or dogs fighting or whatever it is, save that in your favorites and just have the wherewithal to just get yourself to that computer and hit play. And for some reason, for me, it's blooper reels. It's news anchors who can't stop laughing or something happens, and I'm always laughing by the end of it. And it has never failed me in the, I don't know, maybe 10 years I've been using it.
That's awesome. I mean, it's wonderful advice, to actually separate you from yourself, right? Because there's
Hmm.
that thing when we get locked in our head, we are totally blinkered, where eyes down, it's like focus on one thing only, and you're like, yeah, but you're completely, you're completely missing everything here by being
Yeah.
stuck down this rabbit hole, right? Is it?
Yeah.
Do you find obviously that as a useful technique for you? Is it to try and bring you outside of yourself, or just to break your pattern?
It's more to break the pattern. Yeah. My blooper reel is just to get me on my funk. Cause I mean, I don't know about you, but sometimes I get in such a depressive funk that it's just this downward spiral. And the more you think about it, the more you perseverate about it. And then you just get deeper and deeper, and it just gets darker and darker. And that's the only thing. It may not get me out of the hole, but for some reason, when I find a way to make myself laugh, and that's been the only tool, consistent tool, is that blooper reel. But finding myself and giving myself a way to laugh, and I think there's a chemical endorphin relief as well that's at play. But it may not get me out of the hole, but it gets me out of the slump, and I think that's the start of that process to help you then get separated from it.
Do you know what I mean? Because personally, I talk about depression as being more. It's a symptom, not a cause, right? So you can't catch it. You don't tend to
Right.
sort of, oh, dear, I just somebody sneezed and I caught depression, right? It's a trigger from something else in life
Mhm.
that then snowballs and then shows up as this symptom, right? Is
Yeah.
that your take on it? I mean, what way do you think of it?
You know, I I don't really know. I lean more toward there's some sort of biological chemical imbalance, because I remember when I would have these depression episodes, and I look at my life when I'm able to separate. I'm like, I have nothing to be
Mm.
depressed about. Like I was listening to your TED talk too. You were talking about your toothache. Oh, actually, one question I had for you was, did you act? Was it you said the toothache was a metaphor? Did you actually have a tooth pulled out or pull it out yourself, or was that? Oh, you no kidding did. Okay, I was just curious.
For the benefit of the
But
listeners, I do have a gap in my mouth where there should be a tooth, and
that's
I just have never got around to filling that gap as such. But also, it's a good reminder to me. That's the one thing.
well,
So,
sure. Yeah, and it's yeah. But for me, when I looked at like I had the toothache without a bad tooth, if you will. I guess
mm,
that's to carry the metaphor, the analogy, or whatever it is. But I had nothing in my life. I was living very well. I had nothing about nothing to be depressed about. A great upbringing, great friends, great family, great job. And so for me, it felt like more of a chemical issue. So when I
mhm.
when I got medicated, it seemed to fix those things. And I have moments, but for me, it was more of a chemical thing and less about any triggering thing that it was a symptom of.
Yeah, yeah. And that's the thing, right? Because it is, and I know for me, and just going on the medication, that's what they were saying. Is like, listen, you could be 100% better, but the problem is, whilst the chemical imbalance, which it doesn't just change overnight, it takes time for the body
Right.
to process those chemicals. So by getting medicated, it is just helping to correct that imbalance, which then
Hmm.
allows you to sort of snap out of that episode, or sort of put the odds in your favor, more or less,
Right. That's a good
which,
way of putting it. Yeah.
yeah, and that's it, right? So that's the one thing, because I used to be, is like, nah, I don't want the drugs, don't want the drugs, don't want the drugs. And it's like, you will get there yourself eventually, but do you really want to leave it for another 12 months, 18 months, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, right? And then
Yeah.
if you're having a bad day compounded on top of that imbalance, then,
Yeah.
it's just not a good recipe to be there, really.
Yep.
You
Yep.
know, what for you? What were you like as a child? What was Mini Mo like?
um, I was actually a good kid. I mean, I think. I remember I never had a, like, as a kid, as a young adult, I never had a curfew. My parents just said, if you're gonna be out past midnight, call us. If you want to sneak out of the house, just tell us. It was like this. They kind of deflated all the fun illegal stuff I could do. I went to go. I don't know if you guys had this in Ireland, but we call it rolling a house. You take toilet paper and you throw it in the tree. I don't know why we do this, but you go to someone's yard and you take toilet paper, rolls of toilet paper, and you throw it in their yard and you teepee someone's house. That's what we called it. I wanted to go do that one night with some friends, and my mom gave me the toilet paper. Like, so it's just like, I don't know. It was just I feel like I was a good kid, but I feel like it was also a blend of respecting what my parents were asking and respecting the fact that I lived under their roof, and then just kind of going from there. But yeah, like I said, no curfew. If I wanted to go TP a house, mom gave me the rough toilet paper, so I didn't waste the good stuff. But yeah, so I think I was a good kid. I meant well. I tried well. Tried hard. That's like nothing significant to report.
But this is the one thing, right? When it's everything's good or okay, sometimes when we don't have these massive tragedies or traumas and all the rest, right? It can be, then we get totally confused, saying later on in life, I shouldn't feel this way because I can't
Right.
point to that event, right? So it's,
Right.
to have beautiful parents like that just manage you, I suppose, encourage you, and not, and obviously, but encourage you in the sense of being a person, being the best version of you,
Right.
to then come back later on to then, it's different, right? Very different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and it's funny you talk about like having a good childhood and just having a good upbringing and not having that be the cause, if you will, of any depressive incidents I have. But another thing about like writing this book, and I'll remember even right before I went on stage for my TEDx, my speaking coach went to me, and I was the last speaker. I think there was 13 of us, and I was the last speaker. And she stood with me backstage. She did some breathing exercises with me, and she looked me in the eye, and she goes, "Listen, there have been 12 speakers who have talked about rape, have talked about child abuse, have talked about domestic abuse, have talked about suicide, and in your presentation, there are none of those things. So just go out there and enjoy the experience and tell your stories." Which was great, which is really, really powerful to go out there and just realize that, God, these people just needed a break from death and domestic abuse and suicide and child, violence and all these things. But then when I started going to write my book, I'm like, why am I writing a book? Because I don't have any stories of suicide or death or child abuse or domestic violence. But again, I think everybody's got a story, and there's all these lessons and these opportunities in everyday life to be better versions of ourselves. So my book isn't about any one significant negative thing that happened. It's just a compilation of everyday events that have learning points.
Hmm. And I think that's beautiful, right? Absolutely beautiful, because there's a great expression which I don't know, it always just pulls me up each time. I mean, it is, your voids are your values, right? For a lot of
Mm,
people, and that's when they speak, we speak about something that it's meant a lot to us. And quite often it's meant a lot to us, and it becomes our values because it has been a void in our life. As you say, God forbid any of those events happen in any of our lives, it then becomes a very significant event. And then when we succeed in processing that in some shape or form, then we want to share that with the world,
Right.
and saying, is that a genuine sharing, or is this a celebration of your void? And I often think that
Hmm.
it's a fine line, right? Because sometimes people write a
Right.
book and it's going, have you written the book for everyone else? Have you written for you? And
Right. The cathartic experience of writing it all
yeah,
out. Yeah.
yeah, because I know when I wrote my own book, there it was just that the editor I was working with, they asked that question straight out: who's this book for? Do
Hmm.
you need to get this out of your system? Is that the primary aim here? And if it is, that's okay.
Right.
Because it's a form of therapy in certain form. And if it means, you put it down in a couple of hundred pages and stick it on a bookshelf, then and that's going to feel better for you, then that's a success.
Right.
Or is it a toolkit for others to pick up? So
Right.
for you, I mean, well, what triggered the book? I mean, what was your, when did you sort of think, God, this would be great, let's try and put it in the book, and let's get our head around it?
So one of the things I've been doing is I've been going through my parents' house and just kind of helping clean up some stuff and just declutter. And one of the things I came across was this old blue spiral bound notebook. And it on the cover it said My Creative Writing Journal. It was my handwriting, no date on it, but I opened it up and there's like a table of contents all in my handwriting, page after page. There's a table of contents, and then there's all these stories. And I
Hmm.
thought, well, this is interesting. I mean, I had to, I'm guessing based on the handwriting, was maybe 7 or 8. But I looked at the title and the table of contents and I flipped to the stories and I thought, I wonder if my parents maybe gave me like a writing assignment every day and they say, write on this. But then some of the stories were titled, If I Were a Moron. And I thought, no, I don't think this is my parents giving me writing assignments. So I've actually been writing down stories, and I think it's really fascinating to find that book. And initially, when I wanted to write this book, I wanted to have those kind of pages be almost like watermarks in the back
Mm.
and just kind of write over them. But it would have probably taken too much explanation. But yeah, so I have this, my first book, if you will, was this spiral bound notebook from when I was 7 or 8, and I've been collecting stories. And when I'm alone in the car, I practiced telling jokes and I practiced telling my stories. So I've always wanted a way to capture this. And what was fascinating about this process, again, is that the story is different when you write it down in story form for a book. It's different when you write it in a social media post format. It's different when you pre-record it for a book. It's different when you use it in a workshop. It's different when you use it as a keynote. But finding that book made me realize I guess I've always wanted to write a book, and then it wasn't until you're a speaker and they're like, well, you need a speaker's book. You need the book you need to hand out. And then I got back into it, and then kind of finding that along the way, I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. I'm writing the book that is in some form or fashion, in more childish fashion, is in that spiral bound notebook, but just kind of these just quirky little stories about me giving myself assignments. If I were a moron, if I were a dwarf. I mean, these are the kind of things that were in that book, that spiral bound notebook. So hasn't
What
changed much.
what was the conclusion? If I was a moron, what would happen?
I just said I wouldn't like myself very much, and I mean it was just I mean nothing deep from an 8-year-old, that's for sure, but it was just like if I were a moron I would be very careful about what I said to people. I wouldn't like myself very much because I was a moron. So
Yes. Isn't it beautiful though, that the thought process of of that age group, right? Because we see life in very matter of fact. I mean, we could learn a hell of a lot from 7 and 8-year-olds. I mean,
absolutely.
I have a 5-year-old at the moment, and the crystal clarity she sees life with. And it's like, am I
Yep.
teaching you, or are you teaching me? I can never quite
Yep.
tell sometimes.
Well, don't they say that? I mean, kids laugh like 300 times a day versus adults it's like 7 or 17 or something like that. And
Yeah.
kids are so much more creative, and kids are so much they're just so much more free because I don't think they haven't learned the constraints of society to control what they think, and I think that's a beautiful thing. I don't have kids, but I mean the fact I've witnessed it from what you're talking about too.
Yeah, it's just they're just free to be, which I mean, I always think,
Great.
that's it is around, it seems, that sort of 7, 8-year-old age gap where we we disconnect from being ourselves to be a
Yeah.
version that is easier to get on with in life, and whether it
Right.
is a case of saying the right thing, well, then suddenly we have a split between who we are and who we truly are,
Yeah.
and I suppose one thing I've learned from speaking to people for the show is that until we collapse that gap, the gap of the role we play, the who we are for different things, until we collapse that and at least reduce the gap and try and between who I am and who I choose to be,
Hmm.
until that gap's closed, then we're always going to be a bit stuck. I mean, how's that gap
Yep.
for you? Are you close to who you truly are, and do you know who you truly are?
So I'm a lot closer now than when I was in the military. That was another thing is even before I was going to apply to the military, and even when I was going through high school, and then even while I was in the military, I always knew that my first response was probably not the most appropriate. It probably wasn't the cleanest, and it probably wasn't the most politically correct, and it probably wasn't the most appropriate for the situation. But my dad was very quick-witted, and I think I picked up some of that from him, whether it's by nurture or nature. But I always knew that my first response wasn't the one that should come out of my mouth. And after I retired from the military, and I remember being at a speaking event. It was a training session, and we were doing improv games, and which I've come to love. But I went up to the coaches. I went up to the three coaches, and I said, I'm a little concerned. I said, I'm the only person in this group. I don't know the rest of the group, and you're asking me to say the first thing that comes to my mind without any filter. I said, I'm afraid I might cuss. I'm afraid I might say something inappropriate. And they go, yes, please. I mean, the whole idea is yes, and go. I'm like, so it's okay if I cuss. They're like, yeah. I'm like, I may say I don't know what's going to come out of my mouth, but once I had that permission almost to accept it and to know that, again, like your podcast, it's a judgment-free area and it's a safe space where just because that's the first thing I say, that's not my belief in life. It's just that's the first thing that came into my mind as a contribution to this improv scene. I could never have done that in the military. So for 3 decades, I had to stifle my first and sometimes second and third responses. And now I'm in this environment. And again, I still filter what I say. But anything that I say now reflects on me and not on a larger organization of national defense. So, that gap is closing between who I want to portray myself to be and who I think I am. Now I'm still figuring out who I am, but I definitely know that I'm in much better alignment with who I really am, because that's what's coming out of my mouth, and there's a certain liberating effect that that gives you.
I mean that's. Uh, are you that version, that unedited, unscripted, just say what you think? Is that you? Is that almost? Are you almost a channel for that humor? Is it built into you? I'm just wondering, is that quick-witted from you talk about your dad? It's a form of communication, or is it a form of people pleasing? What is it, do you think?
I'm sure there is some people pleasing part of it. I tell you what, I love making people laugh. But even more of a high than that, I remember one of the first official speaking gigs I did, and it was at a officers women's leadership symposium, and I was the closing keynote. And again, I went out there with my stories, and I try to make people laugh, because that really fuels me because I think laughter also helps me connect with people. So kind of find out, you kind of get a temperature of the audience, like, okay, that was too far. I can push it a little bit, so you're just kind of playing with the audience. So the laughter is a good barometer for me. But I got done with my speech, and I don't know if you're like this too, but sometimes I get done talking and I'm just in this adrenaline rush. I have no idea if I even spoke English on stage. Like, I have no idea if the words I said made sense. I don't have any idea if the points I used landed. I don't even know if there's a connection between the story and the point. Like, I get done and I'm just on this high because I've looked at eyes and stuff like that. And I remember being done. I got off the stage and I just had to go to the bathroom. But there was like this long line in the aisle, and I'm just thinking, okay, I just got to get through this line and then I can go to the bathroom. And I had no idea what people were in line for. I didn't know if it was for the bathroom. And then I realized that people were in line to talk to me. And I'm like, this is weird. And the first lady in line was this really tall Coast Guard officer, and she had tears in her eyes. And she said, I just wanted to thank you for giving me permission to be who I truly am. And she
Wow.
started crying, and I'm thinking, again, I'm not sure what I said up on stage, but something I said gave her permission to live, to close that gap between who she was portraying at work and who she really felt like she is. Now, I'm hopeful that who she really is still a good person and a good officer, but I don't think I gave her permission to go be a mass murderer or anything. But I that really resonated with me, and that was actually more powerful than making someone laugh, was making someone feel better about who they truly are and helping close that gap. That was a really big high. And then in the person in line right after her, and I have got to track this girl down. She wanted a picture with me, and like that, if that doesn't make your head big, I mean, like, well, that's hard to be humble when somebody wants to take their picture with you. I'm like, holy cow, this is so awesome. And I'm like, because of something you said and how you made someone feel, and not because you just made them laugh, right? People, want to go see a comedian, that's great. But I want to be funny, but I also want to make people think. And so those were two really big highs that I'm just like, this is cool. I like this. I like being able to connect with people.
Is that your zone of genius? Is that your flow state? Because I mean, I recognize that, right? There's times when you go and come and give a talk, and it's like I turn up, and it's like I have no idea what just said. I would have to look back at
Yeah,
the recording because people say you said
yeah.
this, this, and this. Like, oh, did I? Okay, that's. I'm pleased.
Great.
That sounds quite good. I should have listened to it.
Yeah, someone write that down.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it is. It's yeah. When you talk about flow state, it's just yeah. It's almost like you black out. I guess I don't know how would you explain it. Like you kind of black out, right? I mean,
Yeah, it's. I mean, it's when people sort of talk about the duration of this podcast, and some people said, listen, it's too long for me, and then look, that's okay, but there is a madness in the process, or a process in the madness. And it is typically there that the conscious mind sort of turns up for the first half hour, and that's the bit that says, my name, what I do, and here's
right.
who I am, and all that. That's pre-formulated, right? It just is. And then we go to mid-conscious, and that's where we're sort of going, well, this guy's all right, there's nothing to here, we're having a nice conversation, it's all very warm and friendly, and that's cool. And then after that, we slip into sort of almost subconscious, and that's when we think and speak at the same speed.
Hmm.
So whatever we think comes straight out of your mind, as you say, it's slightly unfiltered. Well, that's a
Yeah.
beautiful thing, because at that point, people saying, why am I telling you this? I've just told you everything that I've told nobody before. And it's
Right.
that
Right.
it's that I would call flow state, is when we just are. The guards come down. It's quite often when people have a glass of wine or a beer or whatever, quite often that it's the same, the inhibitions just drop, and suddenly
Ah.
we
Okay.
just
Yeah.
are. And that flow state, I think it's the most beautiful version of who we are, and
Yeah.
it's that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. It's a good. Well, I hadn't made the correlation between the alcohol lowering your inhibitions and just getting that whole know, like, and trust factor, right? That's what we're after, and that's one of the things I love about podcasts too. Is so like you've been in my ear for the past few weeks, and it's like I watch your TED talk. I've been to your website, and just like I feel like I know you already. So hopefully we got to mid conscious and subconscious a little bit sooner. But there's something about just feeling like you know somebody already, and then you jump into that, and then you feel better and more confident about the safe space that you've created, and that you can create together too. And so yeah, I can see why. I'm sure you have got more like therapeutic benefits for people because you are such a good listener and you have that contagious safe space creation, and I think that's awesome. And like you said, not every podcast that you record makes it to the air, and I think there's a benefit for you, but a big benefit for your guests who might say something that they've never heard themselves say. Maybe they've thought it, but they've never heard it come out of their mouth. And to hear yourself in your own words, that's a powerful thing. So thank you for what you do for everybody. It's
Yeah.
it's really cool.
Well, thank you. I mean, it's but that's the thing, right? Because we so rarely get to listen to ourselves. And I know this, and this is the most bizarre thing. It's like I listen to myself all the time. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, but you're not actually listening to the language. You're not listening to the way you refer to yourself, the words, the
Hmm.
different parts of you. I, me, myself, I, we. So it's, I mean, the 7 different ways we in the main part that we refer to ourselves, and
Right.
it's so close to us we don't actually spot it. And it's like you do realize that you're using different language. You just described a different part of you, and they're like, I have never spotted that, right?
Huh.
So it's
Yeah.
just, and that's the thing. It's right in front of us sometimes that we don't even
Yeah.
spot our
We're
own.
too close. Yeah.
We are too close,
Yeah.
not that's the
Yep.
beauty of sharing, right? It's so,
Yeah.
and that's, it's almost that for me is, sharing your quirk gives other people the permission to share. And it's like going, you think that's weird, you should hear what I think, right?
Yeah, I get it's neat too, and I get some. It's neat too because there's like little memory joggers. I think when I, because again, my stories aren't about climbing Mount Everest or anything like that. My stories are about, seeing a mother and her daughter walking by, and it's neat when I'll get some emails or text messages and people will say, "Oh, I read this story and it's really cool and made me think of this," and then they kind of go into their own story, which is great because everybody's got their story, and again, my whole thought process is, I hope you laughed. I hope you learned something, but now they're thinking about it and they're related to their own life. And that's it right there. I'm mega happy that people are doing that and having those experiences. And I'm super happy that people are sharing it with me, because that's the thing is, if you're having this experience that maybe I was a catalyst for and I don't know about it, share with me. I think that's the coolest part, is that when you get that feedback, it's powerful.
It is that ripple, isn't it? Right? That you
Yeah.
don't, sometimes you get to know and sometimes you don't. It's like people go, I remember what you said X time ago, and you're like, okay, did I? I was like,
Right. Right.
was I there?
Okay. Yeah. Yep.
But it's just having that feeling. And is that one of the main drivers for you? Just that sort of being, is that your purpose? Do you know what your life purpose is? Do you believe you have a life purpose?
I think I have a purpose. I'm still figuring out what it is. It's just trying to find that balance between being there for other people, but also being there for yourself. And I think I've spent a lot of time being there for other people. And so for me to spend time on myself, it feels a little selfish at times. But whether it's a relationship with myself or other people, I'm still trying to figure out what my purpose is. It, right now, I just want to make people laugh, and I want to make people smile, and I want to make people feel good. In that sense, not, so, but I just want people to be able to feel good about themselves, and feel good about just that moment that they're in, and appreciate it. And if that means stepping away for it for a second to realize it's not as bad as they think, or to step away from it and realize this is a good moment and I need to appreciate it.
Because that's, yeah, leaning into that. I mean, what is it
Yeah.
that we're sort of distracting them from or taking them out of? What's your intention there?
Again, a lot of it is just not getting so in your head. I think we sometimes get so in our head, and there's so much noise in there, and whether the noise is negative self-talk, or to be the flip side of it, overinflated positive self-talk, where we think we're better than we are, or we think we're worse than we are. But it's kind of helping to tamp down some of the noise that's in our head, whether it's other people in our ears saying things that aren't true, or if it's us talking to ourselves. And sometimes it's just giving people a moment to just stop, and just stop it for a second, have that little gap, that little bit of disruption that makes you just a little bit off course, so you can kind of, decide, do I need to go back on my course, or do I need to change course? And a lot of it is just interrupting that noise for a second.
And what does that do? Is it down to incongruity? Who you think you are and who you're acting as, and it's just breaking the pattern to let people see that there is a difference? Or am I looking into it too much here, Kira?
No, I don't think you're looking into it too much. I think I think that's it on a more a grander scale. I mean, for me, sometimes it's just just that moment to be able to give someone a break. And it's just like, you know, a lot of times we were talking earlier about how when you're so close to something, you don't notice the words you're using, you don't notice the tone of voice you're using. And sometimes when you just get a break or you have someone reflect that back to you, then you notice the change. Or sometimes when everything else is the same, when there's something different, it stands out. Or when everything else is different and then you find that one pattern. It's kind of finding those patterns that disrupt either your vision or your thought pattern. And again, it's just interrupting just long enough to get your attention and cause you to focus on that difference. So if the difference is an see, you're using big words. If it is a difference of that gap between who you think you are or who you are or who you're presenting yourself to be or what you said versus what you meant, right? Big tone of voice is a really big deal. You know, it's just enough to interrupt that pattern to make you recognize that there was a pattern and the message you're sending may not be the message that's being received.
Are you nice to yourself generally? Are you good to yourself? Do you talk nicely to yourself? How are the voices? Let's start with that one.
The voices in my head have gotten better. I won't say I've always liked myself. I have gotten better about it. I like the person that I am now, but I've also made a lot of mistakes and I've had a lot of moments where I didn't like myself. So yeah, I think sometimes it feels a little bit self-indulgent to say, "Oh, I like myself, I love myself." But I think it's easier to love yourself than it is to like yourself. But I'm getting there. I'm not infatuated with myself, but I'm trying to like myself better.
Break that down for me. That's a really intriguing way of looking at it. So it's easier to love yourself than it is to like yourself.
Yeah, I think. I think love tends to, well, first of all, I think we throw the word love around, right? I love your shirt. I love the thing. I love this. I love that. I love you. And I use it a lot too. And I think it's easier to love something, but when you like something, I think you're being, and it seems counterintuitive, but I think when you like something, you are, there is a connection and it's like the double use of the word like. So if I like you, it means like, I am like you. That's how it is in my head. There's something similar. There's something that connects us. There's something that resonates with me because I like you, because I am like you in that one form or fashion. So I think that liking something about yourself means there's something you recognize and that you want to bring out, and that's something that connects you and that it resonates with you versus I love it. It's just, and again, it may be just because we've overused or misused the word, but love has this warm, flowing, harmonious feeling, and I think like is a more specific. And again, it's not a homonym, but it's got the dual meaning of liking something and being like something. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it does. I mean, on several levels. And well, thank you for sharing there because I mean, I always there's that sort of expression, and I don't know, somebody smarter than me will tell me, but it's that aspect of saying it's not that I necessarily like you, it's I like how I am when I'm around you,
Hmm.
right? So it's like I like how I feel when you're in my presence, right? So it's
Mm-hmm.
not that that as humans we are just sort of born to be sort of in our inner experience, right? Because we can't experience outside of ourselves, so we have to experience
Right.
it inside ourselves. So your presence and somebody being near me or who they are makes me feel good, which means then I like you because of what you've revealed in me.
Right.
So that it does make sense to like. I have this mad urge to ask. I mean, for you, can you break down the difference between listening and hearing for me?
I think hearing to me it's kind of like the difference between laughter and humor, both of which are important to me, but laughter is more of the superficial, the sound and the act of laughing, versus humor is the sense, that the wit and the wordplay underneath it. So, and I don't know if listening and hearing, I think listening is more like laughter. It's the superficial, yes, I hear the words, I listen to the words that are coming in. But hearing is the deeper part of hearing is paying attention not to just the things that you are hearing through audible tones, but hearing is also paying attention to the things that you are not saying. It's paying attention to the tone of voice. It's paying attention to your body posture. It's paying attention to anything else that you're doing. It's listening to me is the actual act of sound frequencies coming in and registering as sound frequencies coming in, versus hearing is paying attention to the message, the tone, the body posture, the nonverbals, all the things that are beyond just frequencies coming in. Does that make
Yeah, no,
sense?
I mean, I think it's a beautiful reflection and way of looking at it, and it's just that, right? You know, and I was just thinking almost there with your book as well that your book is a book, right? So it's pages, it's ink on it's ink on a page, it's
Mm-hmm.
that on a physical dimension, but on an emotional dimension or a spiritual dimension, if you want, it has the potential of bringing in that laughter, that humor, that actually it's a guilty pleasure, right? That you,
Yeah.
from what you've compiled, and this thing can either be life-changing power or it can be a book stop, you know, or a doorstop, you
Yeah.
know, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it has both that potential within it. So it's the same with, for me, listening and hearing. To me, it's like I can listen to someone all day long. Are you actually hearing what they're saying? That's the
Right.
difference for me, you know. And because I don't know, a lot of people sort of say, oh, I hear what you're saying, but then I'm really listening. And again, it's the semantics and the imperfection of words,
Right.
right? But it's that hearing someone that's saying, I'm actually not listening to what they're saying. I'm listening to the tone, the context, the,
Mm-hmm.
you know, the text, the emotions, all that, which is so different, right? You know, and that's why I'm sort of almost looking beyond the humor with yourself. It is the actual intention here is to think, because when we
Yeah.
think, that in itself is the trigger.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we go in with the intention of thinking, then there's a chance something may change because
Right.
we think about it long enough, and then you know, you throw it all up in the air, and then you sort of get a chance to organize it back in the right way, potentially for you. Does that make sense? Am I rambling? I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. 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 No. Yeah. Absolutely. And it's the other thing too is it's. I think we're just inundated with data all the
Mhm.
time, and what you do with that data turns it into information and turns it into tools. So, yes, they can be words on a page, and if you laugh, that's great. I'm happy. If you get something out of it, that's even better. But and then when you share it with me that you got something out of it and you laughed, that's awesome. I mean, because that is the difference between a tool and a doorstop, right? So that's the that is that transition phase. That's the gap between it just being a comedy book and being an actually thought provoking, kind of get you to reflect on your life and use it as a tool of information that's coming at you and not just words.
Mm. Yeah, makes a huge difference. Talk to us about the character on your book. So, I mean, for our listeners, well, I mean, I don't know how you
Yeah.
describe it. What's the best way of describing the
So
character?
yeah, so her name is Mokolohe, and Kolohe in Hawaiian means rascal, and my mom always used to call me Kolohe, like it just means rascal and up to no good. So Mo is for Mo Barrett, and Mo is also for more. So more rascal is essentially what her name means. The She is actually supposed to be a menehune, which is it's basically a Hawaiian dwarf or elf. And so in Hawaiian folklore, the menehune were these artisans and these little craftsmen that are little elves that only come out at night. It's kind of like the cobbler's elves, right? So they just do all these little, and they're always playing pranks and things like this. But the menehune is what she is, and she's dressed in aviation garb. So the idea was for my mascot to be, I wanted it to be cartoony because again, I don't take myself too seriously, and I try not to take things too seriously. But I wanted her to have a Hawaiian lineage in there, so that's in honor of my mom. And then I wanted the aviation garb and kind of like the World War II era because my dad was in World War II, not as a pilot, but he was in the World War II in the Army Air Corps for the U.S. And so I kind of wanted those two things and went to 99 Designs, and this guy in Indonesia actually designed her, and I've just I I'm really, really happy the way she came out. And it's just one of these things where it's my little Hawaiian menehune.
I love that. I mean,
Yeah.
it's disarming in itself, but that's the beautiful thing about the sort of the method of teaching, right? Sort of the laughter disarms, and as you
Hmm.
say, then it's that ability to pull it apart. You know, whether it's a character, you know, and unintentionally people then learn because they're laughing, they're open, we've broken state. They're then open to learn and then thinking as a result of it, right? So I
Yep.
think it's great. You know, I
Yeah.
love the
Thank you.
characters. Great sport
Yeah.
and great attitude to the character.
Yeah. No, I'm happy with her.
Is it a representation of you, or do you think it's
It, it, so Mokalohe is all the things. She is my quirk. She is all the things that make me unique. And I think that because we all have the things that make us unique, and I always tell people, I said, figure out what your quirk is. And it's not just one thing, it's that your whole quirk is just all the attributes that make you you. But I'm always like, just name your quirk. I mean, this is my quirk personified. So Mokalohe is all the wackadoodle things that make me me. And so I tell people, I said, find those things, embrace them, leverage them, and then name them. Like, give your quirk a name and go with it. It's like your alter ego, right? Your superpower, your super person.
yeah, totally. Well, how would you go about finding your quirk then? Give us an example if you can.
That's a tougher thing because I think it's a very personal thing because first of all, I think a lot of people don't want to recognize that they're weird, but everybody's weird in some form or fashion, and it's recognizing the balance of all the different things. And a lot of times it may be asking, again, we keep talking about separating from yourself and maybe getting outside of yourself. And it's maybe asking the five people who are closest to you, not geographically, but closest to know you well, like, what is it about me that makes me different in your perspective? And it's kind of seeing those things that resonate across different people and different circles in your life. But ask the people who know you the best, and then ask the people who don't know you as well. And I think you'll start finding the things that you're missing because you are it all the time. But asking the people who know you well, and then asking the people who don't know you as well, and finding those common things that you may not even ever recognized as a quirk because that's just how you naturally operate.
I think that's a beautiful way of looking at it, as you say, asking those around you, you know, what way others perceive you as. Because again, we get that we have that issue, right? Because we're so close to
Yep.
ourselves, we can't see ourselves. So we need to reflect at a greater distance to be able to actually see ourselves, ironically, to get focus.
Yep. I'm really into team sports. I just, it's, to me, life is a team sport. And so for me to go to a silent retreat and try to find the answers within myself, like, if I can't find them here or there, I would rather have somebody else's help. So to me, it always helps. It's not just a matter of reflecting and getting your own mirror, but it's finding somebody else to serve as that mirror and help you see the reflection. Because again, you keep seeing the same things over and over again and you overlook them because they're just that part of the natural landscape of your personality. So I think maybe that's why I'm into team sports, or maybe it's because team sports, and that's why I'm into helping others kind of figure yourself out. But I think you can't do it without other people because you are always overlooking it.
Is this something for you that you need as much as others, if that makes sense? Or this is part of your journey to discover and unravel yourself, the greater part of you? Because that's what we tend to do, right? We sort of help those that have maybe just aren't as far along in the journey that we've just come along, right? So we help give based on the lessons we've learned, right?
I wish I had a more noble cause, like to want to help people, but um, I yeah, I'll just leave it at that. I wish I had a more noble cause. To me, it's just about. I don't think my stories are extraordinary. I don't think my stories are, again, they're not about climbing Mount Everest. They're not about surviving domestic violence. They're not about surviving any of those things. They're about it's kind of the flip of that, and it's finding, and I always say that the magic in the mundane. So I'll use an example. I remember walking to a post office one time, and I just was taking my time, and walking toward me was a mom, and then about, I don't know, 10 paces behind her was this little girl trying to catch up. She's like, Mom, wait for me. I want to hold your hand. And the mom was just so busy, and she's just like, not now. We got to go. We got to go. She was just on a mission. And I don't know what, again, I don't have any, I have all four-legged dogs, four-legged fur babies, but I don't have any kids. And so I don't know what it's like to be a busy mom. But I remember just kind of feeling for that little girl because she wanted that connection with her mom. So I turned around, I grabbed the little girl's hand, and I said, I'll hold your hand because someday your mom is going to be begging you to hold her hand. And by the time I said this, we had caught up, the little girl and I had caught up to her mom, and her mom's body just went, you could see her whole body just kind of go, oh man. She juggles all her mail and her keys, and she grabs her daughter's hand. She looks at me, I let go, and the two of them walk off. And I thought, that wasn't any drastic, life-changing, CPR or Heimlich maneuver. It was just a moment for me to kind of point out in a kind of a obnoxious invasion of mother-daughter privilege, but it was just a way for me to show that there was a time. It didn't cost her anything. It didn't slow her down. She didn't miss any appointments. Just to slow down a half a tick and hold her daughter's hand because all her daughter wanted. And I think it's one of those things where that was the moment I realized that I don't have to have had to survive some massive tragedy or been through some just deep depressive thing that I struggled and clawed my way out of. There was just a time when I was able to show a mom how to be a better mom in that moment. Now, I have nothing to do with homeschooling or cooking or dressing a kid, but in that moment there was an opportunity for her to be a better mom to her daughter. And it's basically that's about as noble as I get. That's all these stories are, is things that I've done, decisions I've made, faux pas that I've made, or ways I've handled a situation. And if somebody wants to take away something from that beyond just laughing at me, that's what it's about.
It's back to breaking state again, right?
Sure. Yeah.
It's that sort of, I don't know, shock's maybe a strong word, but it's that, break the state of, yeah, I'm busy, I haven't time for this. And it's like, whoa, what's going on?
Yeah.
And just that sort of change in reflection. I don't know. Because I don't know that it's, for some reason, that poem, taking time to stop and stand and stare, it's just that, we're so busy being busy that actually you miss the whole point of it.
Yep. Yeah, you get some people that work, 60, 80 hours a week, and they're busting their butt. And then you're like, why do you work so many hours? I'm like, well, because I want to get all the money that I'm earning. I'm like, okay, and then what are you going to do with that money? Well, then I can take a vacation. Okay, when are you going to take a vacation? When I'm done working. Okay, but you're working to take a vacation that you're working and can't take. It's like this. And again, to be able to break that state, I like that turn of phrase too. It's just like, okay, well, you're busting your butt working all these hours away from your family to get money for a vacation that you don't have time to take because you're busting your butt working all these hours. So it's that. The other thing I always tell people to do is ask yourself why 3 to 5 times. So, I have to turn this report in. Why? Well, it's due for the staff meeting. Why? Because my boss needs it. Why? Because his boss needs it. Why? Because it goes into the annual report and it has to be this pretty graphic. Well, that's, it's different than just providing somebody data. So it's asking yourself why, just 3 to 5 times and figure out, okay, what is really the purpose of what I'm doing? And then, what you do, again, it's data versus information. What you do with that data then can inform your next decision. And maybe that changes how much effort you put into something, how much priority, how much weight, how much effort you put behind something. And maybe if it's something you should be doing at all. So I always just tell people 3 to 5 whys.
How, totally unscientific, but I mean, how conscious do you think people are? I mean, how close to their whys are they? Or is it just a case of, well, this is just what I do. This is what our generations have done. This is what I've done my entire life. So what are you talking about?
Yeah.
How close do you think people are to knowing their quirk or knowing their why or knowing their actual the core reason for what they do?
Not, I mean, I haven't done a statistical study, but I would say a majority of people don't know the real specific why of what they're doing. That was one thing that would drive me nuts, and it drives me nuts even outside of the military. But a lot of times the answers was, "That's the way we've always done it," and I'm thinking that is the dumbest answer. I mean and that was part of the reason I was actually surprised I made it for a whole career because I was always challenging the status quo when I could because I didn't accept that's the way we've always done it. Because I don't think that's necessarily a good answer. Now, there's times when it might be, but again, by asking why 3 to 5 times, we may find at some point during that questioning that it isn't the best way to do things. It may have been way back when, but that doesn't mean it's still the right solution, especially when you've been doing it for decades. And it's just like, times have changed. So,
That almost makes it worse, doesn't it? We've done it for
yeah.
decades this way. Okay, that's exactly why you might
Yeah,
want
like
to.
yeah, like do you hear what you're saying? We've been doing it this way. A lot, like we have planes that fly in the air now. People can go to space now that we're still only doing it that way because that's the way we've always done it.
Yeah, as people go exactly that. I don't know. I don't want to sort of get into well, I don't know. I mean, it's the control mechanism, I suppose, in the military. I understand it's a humongous organization, so there needs to be
Yeah.
a structure. But then, how do you maintain a heartbeat? And can you maintain a heartbeat on a structure so that actually everyone's working to common goals, common whys, as opposed to, you're a number, you have this, you get a check, at the end of the month.
Yeah.
So just do what you're told, and that's it.
Well, I think a lot of it is comes down to leadership, and I think it's leadership at every level. So the big boss, we always have the mission and vision, but when you get down, 17,000 layers down to where I'm in my cubicle, it's finding out how you align with that greater mission. And ideally, you're looking for a leader that is constantly working to get in alignment with that so that all the leaders are doing that. But as with any organization, you get some people that are there for the 20 years, get the watch and collect a pension, and then you've got other people that are in there honestly trying to give their best and to make a difference. So it's just, and again, like you were saying before, is I can only control myself. I may be able to bark out orders and things like that, but everybody else is an independent thinker, and they all have their agendas and they all have their perspectives and their best way to do things. But if I can at least control my own self and see how my piece fits into the greater piece, whether it's within an organization, whether it's in my family, whether it's in the church or the community or whatever, that's all I can control. And so it's just about being intellectually curious about my particular role in the big thing and how my widget making team fits into the bigger picture.
Do you look back at your career almost like it's a sort of a whole separate entity, a whole separate life that didn't exist?
I do now. Being in the Air Force was all I ever wanted to do. I mean, I have a picture walking alongside my brother when he was in Reserve Officer Training Corps. So it was at the college level, it's kind of the ramp to commissioned service. And it's a picture taken from behind us, but I'm holding my brother's hand, and he's 10 years older than me. And you can tell from the picture that I'm trying to get in step with him. Like I wanted to walk in step with my brother. And I knew back then, I think I was 6 in that picture, 6 or 7. I knew in that picture, I remember wanting to be like my brother and my dad in military service. And so that was all I ever wanted to do. So when I was in the military and I was getting closer, you're trying to get all promoted up to all the ranks and things like that. And the writing was on the wall that I probably wasn't going to make general. And I was thinking, I don't want to retire because this is all I've ever wanted to do. I had no idea what I wanted to do on the outside, because I had let myself be defined as an Air Force officer, and so I couldn't see anything else. And I had forgotten and buried and suppressed the fact that I can make people laugh, that I can write, that I could speak, all these things, because all I had ever done is use the label Air Force officer. And because I had defined myself as that for so long, it was like I didn't want to retire because I didn't know who I was. So when I retired in 2018, and when I retired, I was anxious, but that anxiety lasted about 3 days. And then I was like, holy cow, I don't have to have a filter. I don't have to, I can be inappropriate if that's how I choose to represent myself. So now being on the other side of it, 6 years ago, I was just terrified of retirement or not having the identity as Air Force officer. Now, yeah, it feels like a whole nother life, and I'm grateful for it. But now I'm on this, I guess they call it a second act, and I love it. I kind of wish I retired sooner, because like I could have been doing this sooner, but I love it. And yeah, it seems so long ago, and I'm still in touch with all my friends, but I don't miss the military. I miss all my friends and the camaraderie we had, but we stay in touch. So I've got the best of both worlds.
Did that have to happen for you to be where you are today, do you think?
I'm sure it did. I think that everything, not necessarily that everything happens for a reason, but what you do with the things that happen can become your reason for the next thing that happens. So I certainly didn't have to work, and I always joke now. In fact, my partner always tells me, she goes, "You work 7 days a week." And she has to pull me away from the computer. She has to pull me away from books, and she has to throttle me back. I work harder now that I'm retired, and I always joke that I need to go back to work so I can relax, or maybe I just wasn't that much of a value for the taxpayer in America. I don't know, but I'm working harder now, charting my own path than I ever did when I was in the military. Maybe it's just a different kind of work, but yeah, I think that everything happens the way it's supposed to, and it's what you do with that informs your next step.
What's your ethos then when you turn up? I mean, do you feel like you have ground to gain, or you need to catch up? I mean, what's your underlying feeling, or is it just a case of this is life's a wonderful sort of sweet shop and it's there for the taking? I mean, why do you work? Why do you sort of work harder than ever?
I don't know. I think it goes back to the fire in the belly thing, and I can't explain why this gives me fire in the belly, but I love to create. Like, I love to I'm an idea fairy, not a good idea fairy, but I'm an idea fairy. I have all these ideas and this creative things, and I start all these projects, and I get this. I make fire starters out of coffee grounds and candle wax, but I love that process, and so it's just that I don't know why, and I don't know. It's just being present in the moment and recognizing each moment for what it is, not getting too deep with it and not taking it too lightly. But again, it's just being grateful for what I have and being grateful for the things I get to do. I think that's, to me, life is just a series of moments, and they're not all perfect, and they're not all butterflies and unicorns or whatever. But it's what you do in those moments and how you live those moments. So I'm enjoying the ride. I mean, they're not always easy. I mean, there's days when I'm about ready to throw my computer against the wall, but I kind of like those struggles too. It was like prepping for the TEDx talk. There were times I probably had 37 versions of my speech that I ended up giving. My coach was making edits the night prior, maybe the day of. We added a joke or took out a joke or added a joke we had taken out or something. And as frustrating as that whole process was to go through the self-doubt of thinking, I'm never going to have this memorized or whatever, to finally having done it, in its entirety, all the lows, all the highs, all the just the boring parts, it was to be present in that moment. I didn't enjoy the challenges. I didn't enjoy the negative parts, the self-doubt parts. but I enjoyed being in it and recognizing it, if that makes any sense.
It does. I mean, are you typically then pain driven or pleasure driven? Where do you normally sit?
I think I am pleasure driven, which probably causes other people pain. So, but I'm definitely pleasure driven. I'm very not impulsive, but yeah, and it's a lot of it is pleasure, not my own. It's kind of a I always say I'm a giver. Like I think my pleasure comes from making somebody else laugh. My pleasure comes from lighting somebody else up. So it's my pleasure comes from giving somebody else pleasure. I don't know, that's
Hmm.
sounds weird, but
No, I mean that's. And do you prefer which would be more appealing to you to try and solve a problem or to start with a blank sheet of paper and invent something new?
blank sheet.
Okay, see
There's
what's
something
possible.
so intimidating. You had your white notebook, right? There's something so intimidating and empowering about a blank piece of paper. Like I've just gotten into these erasable pens, which I love. And sometimes I have to use the erasable pen because it's a nice transition between a pencil and a Sharpie. I'm like, I'm not ready for a Sharpie for this blank piece of paper. Even though I've got a whole ream of blank paper, there's something so intoxicating about a blank piece of paper. But it's as intoxicating as it is, it's also frightening because it's like, I'm going to make a mark. And I don't know why I let it kind of get in my head so much, but there's something cool about a blank piece of paper because it can
Yeah.
be anything. Yeah.
Well, that's. I mean, it's sort of reverse or looping back on what you were saying. I mean, what would you say? What are you really great at, and what are you really terrible at?
What am I great at? I think I'm I think I'm great at connecting with people. To find this is something I do in my head. Whenever I'm walking, usually when I'm just walking by myself, whenever I walk and I encounter like I'm watching somebody, I don't always say something to them, but I always quiz myself. If I had to stop right now and talk to that person, what would I say? So I'm always trying to pay attention. So I think I'm good at observing, but I think I'm great at connecting with people. And so I'll always look and like I live near Annapolis, which is where the U.S. Naval Academy is, which is a big rivalry for my Air Force Academy. So a lot of times I'll be walking, and if I see somebody's hat, and if I do choose to stop and interact, I'll say something like, "Oh, I'm so sorry about your hat," and they don't even know A, that they have a hat on, B, much less what's on it, but it makes them stop and look, and they see their Naval Academy hat or something. Or I'll say, "Hey, you've got some smudge on your shirt or your hat," and I'll try to wipe the logo off or something. And and instantly you have a connection. And even though it's based on a rivalry, again, it's breaking that gap of them just walking along wearing a hat. So I think I'm great at connecting with people and finding some strand of something, whatever it is. And I always quiz myself when I'm walking. I'm like, what would be the one thing that I notice about maybe they have a limp, maybe they have their watch on the right hand, so maybe they're left-handed. So I mean, all these little things, I just pay attention. And I'm like, if I had to stop and make a conversation, what would I say to that person to catalyze that conversation? So I think I'm really great at connecting with people. What am I bad at? Taking on too many projects, probably saying no is probably I'm something bad at.
Yeah, it's good to know that too, right?
Yeah, I guess. It's
Admitting that you've
it's
taken
one
on
thing to
too
know,
much.
it's one thing to do something about it, but I'm sorry, what now?
No, I'm just saying it's just that, right? It's sort of yeah. It's like you actually want me to admit that. It's like
Yeah.
yeah. My wife says that to me. It's like how many things are you trying to do? It's like I'm doing them all perfectly. Don't don't
Yeah.
question me for God's sake. You know,
Don't mess up my system.
like anyone else is like a bombs hit the place. It's like no, this is a system. Don't move anything. So yeah,
Okay, so here's a question for you then, Pete. Do you have a name for those bombs?
little pockets of potential.
Ooh, nice. See,
Yeah.
so my partner calls them Monados. So I go and I just have just stuff is everywhere, and I'm like, it makes complete. It looks like all, spread out and stuff. There is a system. Don't touch anything. Don't let any wind blow my notes over. She's like, okay, well, how long is this Monado going to be here on our dining room table? I'm like, I don't know, probably right until before dinner. So, but pockets of potential. I like that. Pete's pockets of potential. There you go.
That's what's all about, right? And you see, it's interesting you're talking about the pen. You see, that's exactly why I use Sharpie, because it's kind of going, if I do nothing more than just acknowledge and turn up the way I'm supposed to turn up, that knowing the mark that's been made is exactly the mark that's supposed to be made, even if it feels like a mistake, that was the lesson. That was the rather than, because we do that so much, so much of our life is on, it's that quirk and just going, don't mind me while I just mutter away to myself here. It's like, but that's who you are. Let's not try and sort of hide your light under a bushel here. Let's just say, well, that's who I am. Don't mind me. I'm having fun talking to myself. I'll be with you in a second while myself and I
Let's have this meeting first. We'll get the minutes to you. Yeah. Do you ever, when you're on a blank piece of paper and you have the Sharpie, do you ever intentionally make a mistake so you get it over with?
Generally not. I like to try and free form in a diagram, because I like to make sure that it's never going to be a structured lined piece of paper. So I'm quite happy to make a mark, or I'll divide it into sections, or I'll put a little motif. And I do try and make a symbol of what I'm feeling. And that will quite often be a star or a little motif or something, which actually sets the precedent for the page, in that this will not be a structured page. This will not be lined. This will not be whatever, as you say. But by doing that and just breaking the blankness of it, and that's okay.
Do you ever go back and look at your notes and do, like, each page have a kind of like almost like an energy, a different energy on page to page?
Oh, totally. I mean, I can.
That's cool.
It's one of those I can list. So every person I speak to, every mentee. So mentees have their own books. So I literally can, like I say, I don't even need to read the page. I can just see the energy, the way the page was, and instantly it just brings it all back. Same with, interviewing someone. It's like going, if I find the page and the person's in front of me, I can recall that whole conversation just based on the symbols and the layout of the page.
Isn't that cool? That's awesome.
Yeah. I think we all do it, do we not?
Yeah. So you're a visual learner. Are you a visual learner?
Yeah. You got to show me. You got to, it's once you show me, then I'm all there. And I think that's why, because I'm dyslexic and have ADHD, so it's that, giving me a book. I mean, we sort of joke in our house that my wife is a barrister, or a lawyer, as you would call it. She'll read the book from start to finish. If you give me the same book, I'll cut the grass, walk the dog, and go to the shit dog. Anything but read the book. Whereas,
right.
She can go front to back, right? But that's the beauty, right? Is learn how we learn your thing, because I think people don't do that. People don't embrace their quirk. They don't sort of say, well, this is my thing, this is not my thing, this is how I learn, this is not how I learn, this is who I am, right? We're so busy trying to be something else that we forget to be who we are.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of times too, we're also trying to be who we think other people think we should be. And I'm like, I don't think people are thinking about us as much as we think they are, and it's just, it's just the whole permission thing. I did this, I don't know if you've heard of Lego. I mean, you know what Lego bricks are, right?
Yeah. They hurt when
you've got 3 daughters that are probably all over the house, right?
Exactly.
What'd you say? Yeah.
They hurt when you stand on them. I know that much.
Yeah. So Lego has it's called Lego Serious Play, and it's basically like a corporate, almost like a team building kind of thing. But so I have bags of identical pieces. So I went and spoke at a military officers workshop. It was like a professional development class. And while everybody's at lunch, I was a speaker right after lunch, which that's always a great thing. But I was the speaker after lunch. So while everybody was gone, I put a bag. Everybody had a bag of identical pieces, and it was in a sealed bag, and I put it at everybody's desk. And I put one at the mentor. He was like, he outranked everybody else, and he was like the class mentor. And my thought was, like the way I rehearsed it and the way it was working beautifully in my mind was everybody would kind of tinker it while I was talking and build something, or maybe people would barter pieces or whatever. And I forgot that I was at a military officers class. So these are mid-level, 30s and 40-year-olds. And no one, I know that they saw them because they were touching the bag. They saw them. They kind of set them aside. Not a single person opened their bag. So my whole teaching points, and the whole time I'm distracted because I'm talking. I'm like, nobody is playing with the Lego. So I went over to the class mentor. I'm like, hey, can you very, very obviously open up your bag and just play with the pieces, and build something. So he started, and everybody kind of looked over at him, and they kind of touched it, but nobody opened it. We got done, and I was, all my teaching points that went beautifully in my head were going to be, what did you do with those individual pieces? Because you all had the exact same pieces, but what did you do with them? Because nobody was going to build the same thing. It was beautiful. It was a great analogy. And I said, how many of you opened up your bag? Not a single one. I said, why? Because we were waiting for permission. And I thought, man, if I had second graders in here, they would have ripped those things open. They would have, and I would have loved it. But we're all waiting for permission. And I'm just like, dude, open your bag and create something with all the things that make you, you. That's what we're supposed to do. So all the people who have their bag of Lego, sealed up already, just rip it open and start building, start bartering pieces, start building something with all the pieces that make you, you. Like next time I'm going to have to attack that differently, but it was still a powerful lesson of, something went wrong, but it was still a powerful lesson in, okay, you are waiting for permission to bring your pieces of you to the world. Like that's not right. Like, give yourself permission, open the bag, start building. So that was a lesson I learned with, I thought it was going to be this really creative, workshop thing, but.
Usually with kids, it's the other way around. It's like, stop touching it, right?
Right. But again, like we were saying earlier, is at what point do we lose that? Obviously it was at your station. They belonged to you. Someone could have asked. Nobody even asked, but a kid would have torn into that. And so I just, sometimes we need to be more childlike. And I think it depends. I'm not saying throw food on the floor and whatnot, but, sometimes we just need to be a little bit more childlike and approach things with the creativity and open-mindedness that the kids have, because they say some cool stuff.
Yeah. And that's it. It's just, I know with our kids, they call it like messy play, right? It's just,
Yep.
Just be, and it's like, believe me, I'm sort of, I know with our kids, we chose to let them do that, let them feed themselves, and I'm in the corner sort of biting my knuckles, just going, just look the other way while they're doing it, because my sort of minor OCD is just going through the roof as stuff's getting launched, and it's just like they're learning, they're playing, and it's like, really? The dog's loving it. It's like, yeah, this is
all right, yeah.
This is all mine. It's like, oh God, let me just walk out of the room while they learn these amazing lessons. I'm like,
yeah.
I can't cope right now. So
yeah, that's gotta be tough. How old are your girls?
So 5 and twin girls at 3. So yeah, 5, 3, and 3.
Wow.
So yeah, it's
Yeah, so your dog is making out like a bandit. I see.
It's all over it. It's like, yeah, no, that's cool. So. It's making the most of it. Why not? So
what kind of dog? I'm sorry.
Well, it's just a collie dog.
Oh,
so it's nice. It's always nice to have it there. So
yeah.
Tell me this: who's been a real mentor for you, either locally or famously or whatever? Who's someone that you really represents a great way of showing up in life for you?
This sounds cliche, but my mom. I remember we were at a high school football game, and I was sitting in the stands with my mom and dad, and there was a big commotion behind us, and I turn around, and there was these 2 huge guys on either side of a porta potty, like a portable toilet. And there was one guy on either side, and they were pushing it and rocking it back and forth, and there was somebody locked inside the toilet. And my mom is looking, I'm looking, and she's like, that is terrible. And I'm like, yeah, that sucks. So I turn back to the game, big play on the field. I turn to say something to my mom, and she's gone. My mom is about 5'4", tiny little Asian lady, very small frame. And I see this small frame in a wool coat walking up to that porta potty. And there's a big crowd watching these two huge bullies, and this guy's locked inside, and this thing is getting tipped back and forth. And I'm like, oh my God, my mom is going to embarrass me. And I watch her. I couldn't hear what was being said, and I don't think anybody heard anything because it was just, everybody was just in awe. But I saw my mom, and she's shaking her finger at the two guys, and they are looking down because they're huge. And she is backing them up just by shaking her finger and scolding them. So she backs up, and the guys are like back against the fence. They have no idea what's happening, and I'm just like, I don't know what's happening either. My mom goes to the toilet and unlocks the door, and the door comes flying open, and the guy, he's expecting somebody at eye level, and he looks down, and he's kind of taken aback, and he says, thank you. And he goes back, and he starts pounding on the other two guys. And my mom just starts walking back, and she sits down and just wants to get caught up on the game. And I'm like, what did you just do? She goes, I think that's a terrible way to die, to be in a porta potty with all the stuff in there. And I think about that, and I think how brave she was, how stupid she was, but how it was the right thing to do. Nobody else, and all that whole crowd of people, and all the people that saw that going on, nobody else intervened. And of all people, my mom, the tiniest person in the stands, goes up there, and with the power of her finger, because the guys knew they were doing something wrong, but I thought, how brave, how stupid, how bold, and how righteous to be able to go, that is an injustice, and I'm going to do something about it. And I always think about that. I don't know that I ever exhibit that kind of bravery all the time. I mean, the maximum of my bravery is turning around and holding a little girl's hand. But I always think about that, and I can still picture my mom walking to the back. I mean, just walking to that porta potty thinking, oh my God, she's going to get pummeled. She's going to get the crap beaten out of her. And she didn't. She got the guy out of the toilet, got the two guys to stop rocking the toilet, and let that boy take care of the other two guys. But I always think about that, of when we see an injustice, it's how we react in that, as opposed to just recognizing it as an injustice. Now, there's different tools in our arsenal of what we can do, and there's times maybe it's probably not the safest choice to intervene like that. But how brave she must have been, because my heart was pounding watching her do that. I can't even imagine what was going through her mind, but to her it was the right thing to do, and there was no other option. And I thought, that's the kind of way I want to react to standing up for what wasn't necessarily standing up for the little guy, because she was the little guy, but standing up to the big guys, I don't know. But just to be that brave, to do the right thing when everybody else around could be doing it and nobody else is. I mean, I know it's cliche to say my mom is my hero, but I think about those kind of things, and there's tons of examples like that, where she walks the walk, she talks the talk, she walks the talk.
Is that the difference, that she just does what she feels is right, where
Yep.
everyone else thinks about it, and there's a theory I'm sort of running with at the moment, and it is, more or less that the knowing is the voice of the ego, thinking is the voice of the conscious mind, when feeling is really the voice of the subconscious, and sensing is the voice of the soul. So when we choose just to feel and sense, that you feel that is the wrong thing to do. But if you leave it then long enough, then the ego or the conscious mind thinks about it and says, oh, that's quite a big guy, right? Then it's too late, because you brought the conscious thinking into it, as opposed to going, I feel this is wrong, and therefore I'm present enough to act, as opposed to, I don't know, maybe I've taken it too far, but it's
No, that's
that, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, but kind of in that same, to your point, I think a lot of times we overthink things, and as we overthink things, we miss the opportunities to act. and I think there's a balance. I always say if somebody asks me what the secret to life is, I would say it's balance, because if you don't think enough, then you're just going to go all thrust, no vector. But if you overthink things, then you kind of you tend towards inaction.
Mm.
And I think a lot of times we are so busy overthinking things. What's everybody going to think of me? What could happen? And all the what ifs of what could happen if I do this thing. And we carry them out to these sometimes absurd conclusions. But I just think there's a healthy balance of what can you do when there's something. There obviously needed to be an intervention. There was another course of action could have been try to find the security guy, have them, who are properly armed to handle those kind of situations. And I'm sure I'd like to think that my mom kind of ran through some kind of thought process of what can I do? How can I fix this situation? Because everybody else was just watching without acting, or just kind of noticing and turning their back on it. So I think it's that balance between being so in your head that you don't do anything, and being so out of your head that you do something reckless. So I've never asked her. I should have. I never asked her what was going through her mind. It just, for her, that was, guy locked in there. She just thought that would be disgusting to be in there and have that stuff all over you. And she went up and scolded the boys. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Braver than I am.
Well, I listen, I think we're all brave. It just, sometimes it's the circumstance where your values are broken enough that you say that that's unacceptable.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know whether that's an age thing where you just get to the point of going, nah, I don't need to toe the party line. I don't need to, just be another bystander. That's unacceptable. It's crossed it's crossed my value set, and therefore,
Right.
It's bigger than me. It's bigger than, like, I see it with other people's passions, their purpose, their books, whatever, and it's going, this, I am, yes, I might be at the helm, but believe me, this is, this thing is bigger than me and bigger than everything else. I'm trying to steer it as best I can for as long as I can, but yeah, the right thing to do is just that, so
Yeah.
bit of a random question. Who's your favorite comedian?
Ellen DeGeneres. I wish I could meet her, but yeah, I think again, a nice balance of making people laugh using just ordinary events, but with a kindness. She doesn't, tear people down. I just think she's got a nice balance of comedy, observational comedy, without being, without tearing people down.
Nice. It's nice, right? That's genuine. That is genuine comedy. That we don't need to pick on a weakness or a flaw or something else. We can just laugh at the craziness of what we do or whatever, right?
Right.
You can just
Yep.
be. What's a guilty pleasure for you then?
A guilty. This is gonna sound so ridiculous. Catalogs. So,
That's
so
a
like
first.
that.
Yeah, go for it.
Well, thank you. Awesome. Like Levenger, LL Bean, and so when the catalogs come in the mail, I stack them up and I leave them in one of my Monados. I leave them stacked up until I've earned the privilege of going through them. And so Jen knows not to, she's like, "Do you want to keep this?" I'm like, "I haven't gone through it yet, but so keep it." But yeah, catalogs are my guilty
I don't know the
pleasure.
brand. Is this fashion? Is this what's in
So
them?
So LL Bean is like, I'm trying to think of a Jack Wolf, like the Jack, like outdoor clothes,
Okay.
outdoorsy clothes,
Okay.
and hiking boots and backpacks and all that stuff. Levenger is a book readers store, so they've got a lot of office. I love office supplies. So like even like the for imprint, like you can get your logos typed on a pen or something like that, and like cups and all these different ways that you can be branded, like it's their catalog of it. You can have a shirt and a hat and a frisbee and masks and all that stuff. But catalogs, I love it. And then I have to, once I get the stack, and I don't let the stack get too high. I give myself a goal. Like if I do this, this, and this, that that's how I've earned the privilege to look at my catalogs. It's so silly. I remember as a kid, the Sears catalog was a home store. They used to sell houses in this catalog, but it was super thick. And I remember that was my reward for however I rewarded myself when I got done writing If I Were a Moron. But I would flip through the catalog and I would just look at everything and like if I had all the money in the world, if I touched it, that could be mine. So I don't know. Catalogs have always been my guilty pleasure. So I don't know.
Window of opportunity. Well, there you go. I'll never look at catalogs in the same way. So thank you for
You're welcome.
sharing that.
I've had people send me catalogs. People will send me their catalog. I'm like, okay, now it's getting out of hand. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
And I don't even know why.
It is fascinating, right? It's that, what is that window of opportunity or I don't know. I can't say anything because I sort of go, that's weird. And then it's like, no, there's a tool catalog or something comes in. It's like, yeah, cup of tea, cup of coffee, sit down.
Yeah.
Yeah, just relax. And
I think kind of like a blank piece of paper. It's kind of this. It can be anything. Let's say I could buy anything. What like show dens? Nice. Oh, that's a thick one. Nice.
yeah, it's a good one. Just for the benefit of our listeners, I've just found a Hayden's catalog, who's it's a local DIY supplier. So there's doors
Nice.
and fittings and tools and all the rest. And it's like, no, that's a weird thing you do. It's like, hold on, I'm doing the same thing. I've got catalogs
Yeah, see?
at my fingertips.
Call your attention to it. Where are you on office supplies? Do you like office supplies?
Yeah, I must admit,
Yeah.
I do have a bit of a week. So I have a favorite pen. I have favorite Sharpies. And my notebooks I'm really quite specific about. So I order the same notebook each time. And yeah, so certain pens do it for me and certain don't.
Yep.
And it has to be a certain type of ink. And then depending on what season I'm in my life is to yeah, I don't know.
Isn't that funny? Yeah,
Right?
in fact, yeah, I love office supplies like these erasable pens, the 4-color pens, and
Oh,
the thin Sharpies. I love.
Yeah.
I've gotten to the point too where, and this is another thing I'm starting to get more either accepting or unapologetic or apathetic. I don't know what the word is, but if I find a pen that doesn't bring me joy, like I don't like the way it writes and I'm making excuses for it, I don't like that shade of red, I throw it away. I'm just like, I tried you and I keep going back to the same pens. I'm like, I don't know why I buy anything else. I'm going to keep getting the Pilot friction erasable pens, the Sharpie thin pens. It's like, I know what I like and I'm going to stick with it.
Yeah. Oh, listen, I'm with you. So I'll be your sort of weird co-pilot in this. It's like, yeah, that's fine.
Nice. I'm it. Let's go.
It's like the same thing. It's like there's nothing worse than a bad pen. It's like, yeah, it just doesn't
Ugh.
bring me, joys. And like I'm all over. I'm Sharpies all over. I like these.
Oh, it's a big Sharpies. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's one that it's got an angled point, so you can either go thin or thick. So you can.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So.
Now, are you just the black ink, or you go multiple colors, or it depends on the season?
No, I'm 2 colors and that's it. Black, and I really like their blue.
Mm-hmm.
The blue is just such a solid blue, and then like say these notebooks that I use, they're sort of art pads, so they have like a hard back as well. I'm going to show you it all now. I'm giving up. So they always have a
Nice.
hard back and
Oh,
like
cool.
a 100 milligram page. So when you do
welcome.
that in a Sharpie, and it's like,
So
yeah,
it doesn't bleed through.
mind mapping, and then that and the static wall sheets. So I'll just cover the walls here and get the Sharpie out whenever I'm in the mood. So
Yep.
yeah. I've never been drawn into someone's guilty pleasure as much as you've drawn me in. It's like wine, chocolate, crisps, whatever. 90% of the time, people are like, yeah, a nice red wine. Now we're talking stationery, and even now I'm excited. So. Thank you for bringing out my quirk. It's like,
You are welcome. Anytime we can suck people into office supplies, yeah, I'm all for it.
yeah, it's like there's bound to be a book there. It's like, yeah. So who knows? So tell me, I mean, if you were to try and describe your fire in the belly, then in 1 or 2 words, Mo, what would they be?
Connecting with people and making people laugh. Just the connection is that. I love that more than anything else. Just finding a way to connect and kind of break down somebody's walls. Like you find the sourpuss first and it, just kind of chisel away like a little pest, but connecting with people.
It's obviously not word counting, but that's okay. We'll let you away with that.
Okay, I'll do it again. Connecting with people, period.
That's 3 words, but again, we'll let you away with that. That's okay.
Ah,
No, it's cool. I mean, that's it. It is connecting. And it's beautiful. Beautiful.
Yeah.
So tell us, where can people learn more, find out more, find your book, find you, track you down, hunt you down, all the above?
Yeah, quickest way is mobarrett.com, and I always drive people to my about page, which is mobarrett.com/FAQ, and so I say it's the answers to the questions you never knew you had. That's my most irreverent and quirky page. The book Pardon My Quirk is available on Amazon. It's also on Audible. I actually recorded in this very closet, so I recorded all the stories in the book. So hardback, paperback, digital, and audio on Amazon.
I applaud you for that, because there's so many authors, and I'm a listener. I don't, like I say, I have a lot of books, but honestly, it's shelf development. It's actually not something I'm going to read. So I love it when authors take the time to actually do it in Audible format, and especially when you've done it yourself. So I applaud you.
It was a lot of work, but again, I never thought I'm not reading my own book, but somehow I ended up, and a lot of work, a lot of hours, but it was fun.
Done for the right reasons. Is there a final message you'd like to leave with our listeners today?
No, just get out and connect with people. Find a way to laugh and learn and think every day. That to me that's a successful day. I have a laugh, learn, think tracker, and it's just like a habit tracker. It's like just taking that step back and find a way to laugh, find your blooper reel, find a way to learn something, even if that's teaching somebody else something, and then just think about somebody or something and give someone else something to think about. So laugh, learn, think. That's it.
Beautiful. No, it's been a pleasure chatting to you. Thank you so much for coming on.
You too.
Time has flown. So listen.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's been awesome. Until the next time. Thank you.
Thank you.